So we've come to the final Sunday of the sabbatical time frame. When Reverend Nicole is away, Reverend Jackie will be leading, as Kathy mentioned, in worship next week, and Nicole will be here, but without worship responsibilities. Then Nicole fully returns to the pulpit on September 8th, and there are festivities that will be ensuing afterwards. So please be here for that. So today we conclude the summer theme, although Nicole, I'm sure, will pick up on it when she returns. But it has focused on Mary Magdalene, the divine feminine, the call to eat, pray, and play. And today is supposed to be about play. So I've taken the liberty to think about dance as a way of play. And I'm using that theme for today, in case you haven't already figured it out. So all the music is about dance today. And I'm going to encourage you as we go into the final songs to do more movement. I believe you can do this, okay? But for some people, it's challenging to think about dance as spiritual and religiously approved in any way, shape, or form. Many, if not most of us, have watched the movie Footloose, where the ongoing tension is between a faithful, loving father, who's also a biblical preacher, and the new boy in the high school who attends the church, but is also promoting an end-of-school dance for the students. Both are vying for the daughter's attention and her loyalty. She's caught between her love and respect for her father and her boyfriend's widening view of a world where dance is not evil and even joyful, a religiously approved experience. Maybe a spoil alert, but in the end, joy, love, and that broader view of where God is to be experienced wins the day. So I remember a similar, although less Hollywood-worthy, experience of my own. I grew up in a larger, theologically progressive, but still Baptist church in Austin, Texas, where my father was the senior minister. He had grown up as a preacher's kid as well, but with a much stricter understanding of what was or wasn't acceptable if you were to be a good Christian example to others. My father sometimes had an internal conflict then between what his ministerial father, my grandfather, had believed and taught, and what had become my father's increasing realization of how restrictive and at times problematic that view was. You see, my father had grown and developed over the years, becoming more progressive socially and theologically. Being in Austin, hippie capital of the world, sorry, Boulder, Austin was the hippie capital of the world, probably helped with some of that modulation. Our church was part of a group of moderate, progressive Baptist churches across the state of Texas. Yes, there are some in Texas, who came together each summer to have both a junior high, you can tell how old I am, a junior high and a senior high youth camp. The ministers of the churches were active in producing, programming, and leading these camps. As part of the camp experience, we often closed with an activity on Friday night that brought everyone together for some fun, some music, and yes, some dancing. However, we still had to be careful because we were meeting at various denominational camp facilities. So, in the written programming notes, the closing evening was titled as our closing function. Because at a dance, you dance. So at a function, you function. My father, one of the ministers planning the events, overcame that lingering resistance to accept this. This was the early 70s. Newer Christian music artists began playing with the idea of dance as a spiritual experience. Ken Miedema, whom some of you may know, was one of those musicians and is now a justice-oriented musician. But he was just starting out in the early 70s, and he was actually a guest leader at one of those retreats where we had our function. As you may know, he was born blind, and although a gifted musician, pianist, and songwriter, apparently he had never danced. So on the final night, he found himself at our function, sitting by himself to the side of the room as most everyone else was out on what had become the dance floor. He later relayed how he almost instantaneously reverted back to his own teenage years as the lonely young man who couldn't participate, sitting on the side. But that night, one of the high school girls came over and asked him to dance with her. At first he refused, but she insisted. So awkwardly, he let her pull him out onto the dance floor, and keeping hold of one of her hands, they started dancing, to everyone's delight. The next morning in our closing worship service, Ken relayed his thoughts and experience, and as usual, composing a new song on the spot about the experience, he began. She asked me to dance, and I'd never tried dancing before. I had visions of everyone laughing us right off the floor. And though I protested, it just wouldn't do any good. She gently insisted, and finally I told her I would. Unforgettable. She was a fresh breath of spring on a cold winter's day. Unforgettable. She taught this singer to sing in a whole new way. He then flipped the words so that they all applied to God asking him to dance. I had visions of saints and angels laughing us right off the floor. And though I protested, it just wouldn't be any good. He gently insisted, and finally I told him I would. Unforgettable. God taught this singer to sing in a whole new way. Ken, in his own unique way, imbued the potentially scandalous idea of a dance with new meaning by transforming dance into something spiritual, something religious, something life-giving, something holy. It was some 20 years later, after college, after marriage and a couple of moves, after giving birth to my 2 children, that I responded to the call to ministry, becoming what was the 3rd generation of denim ministers in my family. And I began attending seminary classes. Much to my surprise and delight, I learned about a centuries-old understanding of the Trinitarian God as a dancing God. How had I never heard about this before? It began as early as the 4th century with the Cappadocian fathers who talked about the relationship of the Trinity as perichoresis, which is in the Greek. Perichoresis. Peri, P-E-R-I, like in perimeter, meaning circle, all the way around, whole, and choresis, which is the same root word as we have for choreography. The verb perichoreo means to be in space, to pass or enter. And by adding one letter, we've learned earlier with Mary Magdalene and the text about what changes can be made with one letter. It becomes perichoreuo. I've screwed the pronunciation, but that's it. meaning to dance around. Thus, perichoresis means a cyclical dance movement of reciprocity and inner penetration. So look at that symbol, that connectedness that's there. And apparently others had heard of this before me and had been painting images of it for centuries. This is from the Rothschild Canticles, which is from about 1300. It's become known as the Canticles. It's a tiny illustrated book, 4.5 by 3.5 inches. So that's teeny tiny. It's leather-bound, rich illustrations of various meditations, Song of Songs, and Augustine's contemplations on the Trinity. This is one of the images. And it's such a fun image. I know you can't see it really well, but there are angels at the top. One of them is playing bells. And the other one, it has, in one hand, it's playing a trumpet, and on the other, it's playing a drum. So two-fisted music that's coming up there. And at the bottom, there are two dancers bowing to each other, but pointing up to the Trinity. And of course, the depiction of the Trinity. So they're three in one. They're merging, surrounding, relating, and engaging with one another. In the early 1400s, so about a century later, the Russian painter Andrei Rublev created this famous icon of the Trinity. It depicts three angels visiting Abraham, yet is clearly understood to be meant as a symbolic of the Trinity. With three divine beings seated together, they're pointing to one another and relating to each other across the table. Here's a clearer image of it, of somebody who's taken it and reproduced it in a way that it's much clearer what you see. So, although these images and icons are two-dimensional, they hint at something that's dynamic, at something that moves. They give an impression of a snapshot in time, so that if the picture were taken just a few seconds later, they'd be in a different place, different expressions, different poses. I was fascinated by this history that I had known nothing about. So that complex and outlandish idea of a divine Trinity, three in one, separate but equal, separate yet the same, in union, a static Godhead, often portrayed as all male or two men and a bird, morphed into something dynamic, something understandable for me. It's become a key theological underpinning for me of who God is. God is a dance. God is a dance. Not something far away or untouchable or this concretized, unchangeable entity. God grew into something bigger for me. Joy and movement, mutuality, and dynamic relationship. God became community. God became Lord of the dance. We sang that a little bit earlier. It's a song written by Sidney Carter. And Carter tells that when he composed the song in 1963, he was partly inspired by Jesus, but also partly by a statue that he had of the Hindu god Shiva, seen in Shiva's dancing pose, the Nataraja. He writes, I did not think the churches would like it at all. I thought many people will find it heretical and dubiously Christian. But in fact, people did sing it. And unknown to me, it touched a chord. Anyway, it's the sort of Christianity I believe in, he said. And he went on, I see Christ as the incarnation of the piper who is calling us. He dances that shape and pattern which is at the heart of our reality. And by Christ, I mean not only Jesus, Because in other times and places, other planets, there may be other lords of the dance. But Jesus is the one I know of first and best. I sing of the dancing pattern in the life and words of Jesus. So, Lord of the dance. The holy dance is more fluid and more inclusive than we can even imagine. So when I think of perichoresis now, I think of God as existing in the space between us, interwoven, flowing in and through and around and between all of us in this constant movement that draws us into the dance. Perichoresis is used as a way to describe the relationship between the divine and the human as well. So they're not separate from each other. We find the truth of one inside the other. So I want us to look at some additional images that I have pulled that I believe convey these aspects of perichoresis. So let's take a look and see if there are images that particularly appeal to you, that seem to embody the truth for you of this holy dynamism, of this reciprocal dance of love. So here's an abstract art image, but they're sort of three things, but they're sort of not. They're sort of one and the same, but there's life in the middle with this color, this burst of red and yellow that's right in the middle of this. Of children dancing. They're all they're looking at each other, they're playing, they're imitating each other, they're joyful, they're free. The feminist Presbyterian theologian Cynthia Holder Rich says, "We serve a God who is essentially, intimately relational. We serve a God who is essentially, happily non-hierarchical." So think about this. And if you'll notice the shadows, the legs form different. There are three different images, but it's one, but it's three. This is a touch to Mary Magdalene and Easter with the red eggs. So they're three, they're different, they're together. Flames. We talk about dancing flames, right? So you can sort of see three, but it's one, but it changes, but it moves. How does that strike you as an image of the Trinity of God? Women out in the field, another dancing. Mutuality, reciprocity, joy, movement. The feminist Catholic theologian Catherine Lacuna says that the divine dancers experience one fluid motion of encircling, encompassing, permeating, enveloping, outstretching. There are neither leaders nor followers in the divine dance, only an eternal movement of reciprocal giving and receiving, giving again and receiving again. The divine dance is fully personal and interpersonal, expressing the essence and unity of God. Two more images. If you can see closely, you can see that there basically are three dancers, but they're blurred. You can't really see them, but you can, but you can't. And there's movement in that. And finally, again, a threesome. Joy, laughter, the ocean, which has its own meanings and symbolism in so many ways. We are called to become part of the dance. Despite our hesitancy, we are being invited to participate. if we will accept, we don't need to be worried about getting all the dance moves right, or stepping on someone else's foot, or getting wet in the waves. As Sister Katerina Pavlova writes, our dance together allows us to bring compassion to this wounded world. Dance is free and fun, and it is also loving and lively. All we have to do is accept the invitation to step out on the dance floor. Unforgettable. Unforgettable. So now we're going to take a moment for communal reflection. So I want you to break up in groups of 2 or 3 and take a couple of minutes to share your responses to the following questions. What's your favorite dance move or form of dance? When has dancing freed you? And how do you join into the divine dance?
Lots of dancing, conversations. Love it. Beautiful. Well, let's carry on that dancing spirit into our fellowship time. But first, let's take a moment of silence to soak in what you've heard, what your discussion was, and the movement and dance of the Spirit.
Greetings to you wherever you are watching this. For those of you whom I have yet to meet in person, I'm Reverend Nicola Marsh, pastor here at Community UCC. And we see that people like you are watching our live stream each week. And because of this, we are excited to be embarking upon an experiment. And we need you. If you are engaging with us regularly, finding meaning in what we are about, we would like to extend a special invitation for you to be among the first CUCC digital disciples. For signing up for just $10 a month, you will receive a t-shirt with the new CUCC logo. And we are also exploring the idea of offering other content to those of you who are part of this new and growing area of digital ministry. Sign up to support us in this new way at cuccboulder.org/support by clicking on the yellow donate tab and noting you are a digital disciple in the instructions. Or as always, we welcome an old-fashioned check mailed to us at CUCC, P.O. Box 3646, Boulder, Colorado 80307. Thank you for being and building beloved community with us, and thank you for your gift, whatever it might be.